Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney Podcast. My name is Nathan Chaney, and I'll be your guide today on this conversation with Andrea, who is transforming supply chains through education. She is the managing partner of the Production Management Institute and is calling in from Germany today. I'm really fortunate to be kind of being able to grow kind of the presence and the type of audience and the type of guest that I get to bring on the podcast. And so, Andrea, I think you maybe are the second person from outside of North America to join. So I appreciate you jumping on and sharing some of your expertise and experience with us. Let me hand the digital microphone over to you for a moment to introduce yourself in a little more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan, for the opportunity to be your guest today. And I'm very excited also about the possibility to talk with you. So about myself, I'm Andrea Walbert, born in Germany. I'm German, 50 years old, and I spent half of my life in supply chain and IT. Started basically as a consultant, then went through several, let's say, positions in the industry, in the supply chain industry, but also IT. And I'm owning since 2009, I think, the Production Management Institute. And I can say that I made basically my hobby my profession. I love teaching. I love bringing information across to the people, and I also like explaining things a lot. So in supply chain, there's a lot of things to be explained, or which must be explained several times, and so it's never getting boring in this profession. And I'm very happy to be here today to explain a little bit more and elaborate on everything you would like to know about me and my career, and maybe also how I got where I am today.
Awesome. That's exactly the storyline that I like to try to tell here on the podcast is, lots of podcasts out there really dive deep into people and their business, their widgets, their services, that sort of thing. I want to try to uncover the people, the stories behind those organizations and those services. So let's dig in here, I suppose. Can we talk a little bit about your upbringing there in Germany? I've been fortunate to visit on a few occasions, and definitely one of my favorite places to visit. Can you tell a little bit what it was like growing up there?
Yeah, so I'm basically born in the southern part of Germany, in Bavaria, in the, let's say, very close to Munich, where I'm living today. Munich is very famous for Oktoberfest. And basically, that's also what we love having every year here in our city, to celebrate and welcome a lot of people from all around the world, and also friends from all around the world who visit us and celebrate with us. How it was growing up in Germany, I mean, it was very, I would say, this was in the non-digital world, so therefore we didn't really, let's say, experience a lot of what happens out there. It was really a lot of, let's say, local or regionally focused. I grew up on the countryside, and we moved to a bigger city when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and then finally moved to Munich, where I was at a high school where we focused on foreign languages. So in a very early age, I got in touch with French and English, and then Latin. Okay, Latin is not that helpful anymore, but okay. But we did a lot of student exchanges with France and the French-speaking part of Switzerland. And that was then the time where I already discovered, the curiosity for foreign cultures, languages, and so on. And at that time, also in school, I had the opportunity to give lectures or be like a tutor for the younger students, which helped me to earn a little bit of extra money. And so I focused on giving lectures and trying to learn as much as possible the foreign languages, to be able to be flexible, let's say it like that, because I was always very curious about what happens outside Germany. I studied also in Germany. We had a lot of or part of the studies were in English. That was very new at that time already, but that kind of exposed me already early to languages. And so when I had my first jobs, I directly jumped into. So I started as a consultant, and was focusing on at that time supply chain management and IT. So I did a lot of SAP and at that time I2 and then Menugistics and other software tools which are not existing anymore or have been renamed or merged or whatever. But I focused a lot on processes and IT in supply chain, and was directly working with a lot of international clients. So let's say the curiosity towards foreign cultures and being able also to speak several languages helped me a lot with that perspective. The funny thing is that I did not really study supply chain or anything related to supply chain. I basically have a master in communication sciences. And let's say I would say everything related to business administration was maybe covered a little bit in that, but I also had as a second topic psychology. So not really related to supply chain, but it definitely has sharpened my interest in communication, exchanging information, building up or setting up information in such a structure that people can digest it the right way, that they understand what it's supposed to, let's say, or what it is supposed to talk or tell about. And the psychology studies also helped me a lot to understand how, let's say, messages are received. So the sender, communicator topic, how to so to also understand always both sides, the sender and the one who's receiving the message. And that was not really a preparation for supply chain, or let's say maybe it was the best preparation for working in supply chain management, and I just didn't know it at that time. So my original plan was to work somehow in something related to maybe marketing or content management systems, or just bringing information across. And the funny thing was that in my first job as a consultant, and now I come to a second topic, which is very, very important to me, is that at that time there were only men in that profession. And when I applied for the job, I was literally the only woman amongst 40 colleagues, male colleagues. And the department where I originally wanted to go was the e-marketing department, and the one which was concerned about setting up sales systems, e-shops, and all that stuff. And they told me, no, we have already a woman in our department, one. So that's enough. But there's the supply chain department, and they have no woman. So why don't you just start there? And I said, yeah, okay, but that's not really my topic. But I thought, okay, whenever there was a chance in my life, I just took that chance. And so I thought, I want to work for that company. And okay, then I don't start as a consultant anyways, you need to be flexible. So I thought, okay, let's start in this supply chain thing, whatever that is, but yeah, let's do it. And then I figured out quite very quickly that they will never let me go to the marketing and e-shop team, because we worked very nicely together, the 40 men and me, because I realized that supply chain management is also a lot about, as I said, information structure, exchanging information, data, setting up end-to-end processes, communicating the right way. And then I realized that maybe that even makes more sense to use what I really love doing the entire day and what I studied in that profession rather than in marketing or shop systems or other stuff, because I thought this is kind of one way. And in supply chain, it's like you have both ways. You have, again, it's not just that you communicate and then you hope that somehow your message comes across, but it's always the exchange, always in these kind of processes you have in supply chain, planning processes, negotiation processes, whatever. And this is how my career in supply chain started. Plus, I love IT. That was also part of my studies in communication sciences. I started in 1994. At that time, I don't remember exactly the number of websites which were out there, but it was below 100, I guess. So we started the first day with my studies, we started digging deeper into that new thing, internet. And we had one professor who was very passionate about it. And I did basically all lectures with him and all workshops and whatever, where we really learned how to program websites and set up content management systems and all that stuff. And so in supply chain, I could also, let's say, build on that, let's say, love for IT and infrastructure and database and information sharing. And so I think my studies have prepared me quite well for this cross-functional working style which you need to have in supply chain. And although I did not really appreciate it at the time when I applied as a consultant to the company, I'm very happy that they pushed me into that supply chain corner, so to say, because there are so many different challenges and topics which are all related to supply chain management that it's never getting boring. So that's how that all started with supply chain and me.
So thank you for that response, Andrea. You really were able to kind of walk us through sort of those formative years in the industry and how you kind of represent a lot of the people that kind of entered into the supply chain industry from the side or from the back door, and now there's kind of a trend in like sort of the modern academic sort of institutions where there is logistics and supply chain degrees and people that intentionally go into the field from day one, and I happen to be one of those people, and you you're in the academic scene there in Germany today. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective and your view on educating kind of the future supply chain workforce?
Yeah, and maybe I just say how I then also invested a little bit of time in my supply chain education, because you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I stepped in from the side, so to say. And then in one of my first jobs, I had some colleagues who also studied a lot of different things. And one was an engineer, the other came from IT, then I came from communication sciences, and we were all thrown into the cold water, as we say also in German, at a project where it really got deeply into supply chain processes. And then we asked our boss, or one of my colleagues had the idea to do a supply chain education. At that time, that was APIX CPIM. And that is also how I got in contact with ACM, like over 20 years ago. So my colleague convinced our boss that we are supposed to do the CPIM. And we were three people. At the end, it was I didn't want to do it, by the way. I said, okay, come on, I studied such a long time, and I don't want to study again. But they all convinced me, and I'm the only one, by the way, who then completed it. But okay, at that time it was still 5 exams. You had to study a long time. It took me like 2 years to complete the CPIM. But then I really had a very good and very broad also supply chain education to understand all the end-to-end processes inside of a company. And that helped me a lot in implementing supply chain systems and processes. At that time, the term supply chain just came up, and the first universities in Germany also offered some studies called production logistics or operations management, or then the first supply chain management let's say studies came up, but it was completely heterogeneous. So if you studied supply chain, it was not supply chain, it was not the same here or over there. It was really a complete mess, because at that time I got in touch already with some younger students then who studied something with supply chain. So that was in the first years where I also then was a guest lecturer already at my current company. So I was guest lecturing in demand management and planning and IT, because that was my topic in my previous jobs, or that was my focus topic, were my focus topics. And so I got in touch very much with young consultants who directly came from studying supply chain management into consultancy and then did some trainings or whatever with us. And whenever I asked him, please explain to me in like a minute, what was your curriculum at the university, it was a complete mess. Still, I would say supply chain management is so broad that I don't think that all the curricula in Germany at the universities are the same, but you can see some tendencies. So there are some where you study it more from an operational perspective with a huge focus on processes and then also the IT landscape. And then there are others where it's more about tactical, strategic perspective. And then it goes more into supply chain design, network design, and also supply chain transformation and end-to-end perspective with really everybody, so all entities in the supply chain. So that's one area, and as I said, the other one is more operational. But now we can also see that people who really study logistics and supply chain management, that they are very well prepared. Also in Germany, we have a lot of different opportunities where you also can have an international education. I'm also lecturing here in Munich at the University of Applied Sciences, business administration, with a focus on end-to-end supply chain management and also sustainability and circularity. And there, for example, my lectures are sometimes German, sometimes English, it depends. And we also have a master program where it's very often also taught in English. Which helps a lot, because then always also the references which are used during the studies are more international than just German. And anyways, what I have seen in supply chain, let's say like 20 years ago, it was more logistics management, operations management. It was very German. That has changed a lot, especially because of all the multinational companies where English is the, let's say, the standard language or the company language which they are using. A lot of also my customers now who sit in our seminars, trainings, and so on, for them it's just normal to speak to talk in English all the time, and also to read and to study in English. And that has helped a lot in, I would say, standardizing the different supply chain studies across Europe. I cannot say so much about the US, but at least I can see that there has been a harmonization across the European countries, and also a lot of exchange, especially in this topic, with different universities. So I also know that the students from our university, they go to France or Spain or UK or whatever for 1 or 2 semesters to just continue their studies there. And we have a common ECTS system. So that means the education points which you are collecting in Germany are comparable or are kind of the same, being 1 or 2 semesters then in France, Italy, UK, or wherever. So the points which you are earning there fully count for your German final exam, and it's the same in the other countries. So across Europe, we have a huge harmonization. And I think in supply chain management anyways, it's not just one country. You always have suppliers and customers all over the place. So that is kind of represented also in the education system now.
That makes sense, because supply chains are a network of nodes and links, right? And to kind of replicate that through the academic process is actually kind of smart. Could you talk a bit about, we've been talking about students and the industry and the growth and whatnot over time. Can you kind of bring us forward to what you're doing today with PMI and kind of talk about that organization?
Yeah. So basically, as I said already, one of my colleagues during my time as a junior consultant convinced me to join this APIX certification program. And that was the first time I got in contact with PMI, because I did it with PMI. So basically, the company founder was my trainer, my lecturer. And we came along very well. And then I kind of convinced him that I also want to teach for him as a guest lecturer. And the first time he was not very, let's say, convinced, because he said, you are too young, you do not have enough experience. And I said, yeah, okay, but I know I can talk about IT and you don't have anybody to talk about IT, so let me do that. So I had to fight a little bit to get into his group of lecturers. But then, I started with the topics which the others did not like that much. So that was kind of fun. And I got in touch with PMI. At that time, I was working for first for Sandoz Pharmaceuticals, so as a supply chain manager, and then for Infineon Technologies in the semiconductor industry in the IT department, but in the supply chain IT department. And during that time, I was still kind of completing other APIX educations with PMI, and at that time, I also started in parallel lecturing for PMI. So there are several APIX certification programs out there. I did all of them. And it was really my hobby. So I really recognized that teaching and tutoring or mentoring is really something which I like a lot. And so it became kind of my paid hobby, I would say, to work for PMI while I was a full-time supply chain practitioner. And I started already during school being a tutor, so that was there all the time. Also, as a supply chain consultant, I was always the one who had to explain how the processes work or how the IT is working. I was the one who developed the training program, so that kind of was like a red line or like the storyline in my entire life. And what I really like with PMI is that I never wanted to become a full-time teacher. But I could really live my hobby and do still explain things which I know very well in supply chain. So I really liked it a lot. And at a certain point in time, the company founder, he was already in his late 60s, then finally asked me, okay, could you imagine in taking over the company? And I said, well, and the funny thing is, I always, if I see an opportunity, I say yes. And I said, without even thinking about it, yes. So I said, okay, then handshake agreement, let's do it. And I said, okay. So I had no idea how and when and how that is going to look like, but I was just like, okay, that sounds like a super opportunity. So let's just say yes. Everybody else said, you're crazy, especially my mom. But I just thought, no, that sounds so exciting that I can become a full-time, not really, I wouldn't say teacher, it's like a lecturer or lead an education business. And I was super excited, and it came faster than expected. So 2 years later already, a lot of things happened in 1 year. I was pregnant. Kimonda, the company which I was working at that time for, got bankrupt, and so I did not really have a job anymore. I had a daughter. And then at the same time, the company founder lost his wife, and then he said, okay, I'm done. Can you please take it over now? And I was like, okay. I wasn't really prepared, but yeah, why not? So I had two babies. I had one real baby, and then the company as a baby. Yeah. And at that time, that was super challenging, but I really also loved. I really liked it a lot, and so I would say I was really. It was like a gift, a very time-consuming gift, but something which I really like, because I still like building or bringing up education programs and find the best way for our customers also to educate their workforce to be able to transform supply chain or to manage supply chain or whatever. And so that was my story in short. As I said, I was working in IT and in industry as a supply chain manager. So when I joined PMI, I had I would say, something like 15 years of industry experience already, 12, 15, however you count it. And so I think that was also enough to understand how the business, or let's say how my customers' business really looks like and what they have to fight with, especially the big multinationals. And now since more than, let me count, also 15 years almost. No, that cannot be. I'm not that old yet. Let me count. There must be a mistake somewhere. But since a long time, I'm with PMI now. And since I'm there, I'm trying to help our clients to educate their workforce. And I'm very happy to be in the field of supply chain now with a different view now, because I was working in supply chain and in IT, and now I'm helping my customers to do a better job in especially these areas. So I really like that a lot.
I think that the best teachers and professors and lecturers and stuff are the ones that do have real world experience, because you can speak the language of the operators and the industry, not so much from just a pure theoretical perspective, but from a practical perspective, right? I think that we are going to see each other here sometime soon in Brussels, because you are hosting a panel, I think, at the Change Conference. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what you have planned and what that discussion will be about?
Yeah. So the panel is about women in supply chain. Also one of my favorite topics, because as I mentioned earlier, when I started my career, I was, let's say, the only woman in a very big team of male. I really loved it, and they were all just amazing people. But sometimes I felt a little bit lonely, and still in some areas, like in supply chain logistics and so on, there are not so many women. So I'm part of several networks where we try to mentor younger women to start a career in logistics and supply chain. And so that's one of the topics which I really, really love a lot and where I like to talk also a lot. And at the Change conference in Brussels, we will have a panel in the morning about women in supply chain, where I'm together with other women who have an extent or have done a great career in supply chain, but with different, let's say, different focus. Where we are going to share with the audience learnings which we have. We want to give also an advice to not only to maybe younger women which are also there at the conference, to what to focus on, how important, for example, also networking is, how important it is to have a mentor, how to actively ask also for support, things like that. So every one of us is going to share her story, but we also would like to, let's say, put a bigger focus also for the male community which is there, and maybe the decision makers and the managers and so on that topic, and how maybe women feel about several things which are maybe not that obvious, because we very often do not complain and don't talk a lot about stuff, but that there are a lot of issues which we are facing which are maybe not so public. And so we would like to encourage both women and men to join our panel to just see our point of view. And it will be a lot of career advice in general, not just for women, but sometimes women just need some role models. So that's why I also like to moderate these kind of panels to just create some spotlight or whatever, and to create or to give the possibility to other women also to just share their story. Not just the story about typical supply chain topics, but also the story around, and to give career advice and mentoring advice. So that will be our session. We do it in the morning during breakfast. So that means it's really kind of an informal panel. That means people can just walk in and have a croissant and a cafe and just listen to us and ask questions. It will be like a very big breakfast with everybody who wants to join. So I really hope that a lot of people are going to join, not only women, and that we can just share experiences and have a good time.
You had me at croissant. It's my favorite. Whenever in Europe, it's the thing I'm seeking out. My wife and I, we always seek out a good croissant for breakfast. So thank you for coming on and talking a little about your story and your experience. I think it's, on one hand, it's similar to a lot of stories of how people have kind of accidentally come into the supply chain industry, but it's also very unique in the way that you got here as well. And I'm glad that we were able to cross paths, and look forward to crossing paths again here shortly at the conference. Any last words before we wrap up today's episode?
I just come from another conference here in Munich, transport logistics, and we also had an entire day about women in supply chain. I had a very nice group of women to discuss about the importance of networking and being part of an association, or how to let's say bring yourself into an association, but also take some value out of it. And I learned several things today. One is, for example, the famous quote was, "Two is already a group." And if you just find one more person who has the same passion like you about the topic, then become a group, try to support each other, build your own network. And I'm looking forward for Brussels and other opportunities to exchange and speak with other people, because we can learn so much from each other. So the formal education, which I do as my profession, is one part, but the informal and the exchange, this I think is, especially in supply chain management, this is what is really connecting the dots and what makes people grow. And so I can only just say, go out there, find something where you can really, bring in your personal experience already, take out something, do network, try to build a network and share your experience and your knowledge, and you will just grow and grow and grow. And this is basically what's the most important in life, I think.
I fully agree. All right. Well, thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.